I was woken up one night and I was instructed to follow this vision, to go out into the world and locate and find the largest, oldest living things on this planet. Wow, what an assignment. How do you do this? I was compelled to follow this vision, which has been my passion for nearly 30 years. But why? That answer is to archive their genetics. In this country, we've cut down 98% of our old growth trees. 98% are gone. We killed them before we studied them, before we knew what they did. I would like to share with you the impossible. This is the world's first clone of a 3,000-year-old giant sequoia. Thanks to Archangel, it's done now, and we have lots of these. And we can make millions of more of these very, very quickly through tissue culture. Well, let's do it. Let's dream big. Let's do the impossible and make it simple. Help me do this. Let's show the world how you restore an ecosystem the best way that we know how. Could you help us? Would you do it for your grandchildren?
I am sure that you have tuned in today to listen to a near-death experience, and my guest is not going to disappoint. But even more fascinating than David's NDE is the work that the angels have tasked him with. So, months after his NDE, angels came to him in the night and dictated to him what has become his life's mission and purpose: to clone the ancient trees of the world. And for the last 30 years, David has been tasked with helping humanity to save our precious Mother Earth. And I don't know about you, but when I hear about what's happening to the earth, I feel helpless. Like, what can I do to help? Recycle? That seems ridiculous. Please watch this interview. And when you're done, I'm going to ask you to share this with as many people as you can and ask those people to all do the same. And I know that you personally are here today, and that's no accident. I believe that the angels have sent you to help us. And when this video reaches more and more people, there will be many people who will want to help David's cause. They will want to plant trees, they will want to volunteer, and they will want to donate. So this truly is the most important and awarded guest I have ever had on my show. So welcome, David Milarch. Thank you for being here.
Well, I sure hope I can live up to that introduction. Thank you. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to be here today.
So I'm going to share with the audience that we actually spent a couple of hours talking yesterday. We're continuing our conversation because it's been so amazing. I'm going to apologize in advance because David, after his NDE, became very sensitive to electronics, and they do not play nicely with him so much. He can't wear a watch, and sometimes his internet may go out. So if he freezes, it's okay. As long as we can hear his audio, we're going to be good. And so don't worry about that. It's part of the process. But David, I have to share with you, I get so many signs in my life. And when I was hiking and driving back from my hike, there was a song that came on the radio right before I was going to get on the phone to have our first talk. And it was a song called Southern Cross by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And the lyrics said, "Spirits are using me, larger voices calling." And I really feel like that is what this interview is today.
I think that's accurate. And I think most people on the spiritual path, there's no accidents, not even the little things. And we're all getting signs almost constantly throughout the day and the night. It could be animals, it can be birds, it could be one of your favorites, license plate messages, but
Yes.
It's all unique, in my opinion, in my experience, for each individual. They don't want to scare us, but they would like to send us like guideposts along our path and information. So I enjoy every one of them. And I would say at least half of them make me chuckle or smile, because the angels and archangels and the universe does have a sense of humor. Thank goodness.
I agree with you completely. So, David, I feel like you are the Noah's Ark of trees. And you were chosen by the angels because of your special connection to trees. So will you share the story of your journey with trees with us?
Well, I was born into a nursery family in a suburb of Detroit. I was one of the babies right after the guys came home from World War II. They started families, and I'm of that generation. And when I was young, my father had a nursery and a landscape company right in our backyard. So every time I stepped out the door, I was among the plants and the trees ever since I came to this planet. So my entire life, I've been working with trees, around trees. I had a rather large shade tree nursery here in northern Michigan, and our clients were the city of Denver, Minneapolis, Detroit, Chicago, and we shipped trees for the cities and the landscapers, lots of them. But about 30 years ago, we started to notice that the trees that we were growing, wholesale trees, were starting to fail. And when you earn your livelihood from trees, when like birches no longer work, or the elms no longer work, or the beech no longer work, that's part of your paycheck. That's part of your income to keep moving. That disappears. So it's serious. And I also started to notice when I walked around that I thought I saw the decline of our forests. And by the way, for people that may or may not know, trees usually die from the top down or from the roots up. So if you want to see how healthy your forest is or your trees, look at the very tops of the trees. They'll be the indicator of the health of those trees. The roots in the ground you can't see, but they'll show themselves in ways. And I saw a real marked decline in our forests. And I've been an advocate for climate change since the late 60s. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the University of Michigan, back in 1969, I was with Abby Hoffman and a whole bunch of other people starting to raise hell about climate change and ozone holes. So we've known about it, for decades, but it really started to show up in our forests. And it was a quest to find out what was happening. Why was that happening? What was causing the demise or the weakening of our forests and our trees? And that started this quest. And I found out here in northern Michigan that coal-fired power plants from west of Lake Michigan, all the way across America to California, then all the way to China, as we burn the coal-fired power plants, the SO2s and the bad stuff, the mercury, gets into the jet stream from China all the way across the Pacific, all the coal-fired power plants from California all the way to the Great Lakes. There was this constant cloud, and thus a constant rain of mercury and SO2s, because as it crossed Lake Michigan from the west to the east, it got colder, they condensed, and mercury is the only heavy metal that can be a gas or a liquid. It would actually drop in pellets like rain because it condensed. Some made it across the lake and dropped that rain, the misty rain of mercury and dioxins over the west side of the state. And more coal-fired power plants came online, more and more problems. And then in the summer, the Great Lakes have an inversion where the water shifts. The bottom comes to the top and the top to the bottom. And the mercury that was in liquid form would come to the top, and the warmer water turn to a gas, come on shore, and drop. So God forbid, all of our crops, and we're the cherry capital, lots of fruit in northern Michigan and agriculture, there was this constant rain of mercury, the heavy metal mercury, which is very toxic, and all three dioxins. And so that led me to the Native Americans, the indigenous people around here. I said, maybe we should check some of the women's hair. Let's see if that mercury is getting picked up in the fish and the foods and the fruit. And so we did that about 30 years ago with some friends of mine, and guess what we found? Really high concentrations of mercury in females' hair, Native American women, which led to a study with the insurance companies. And the female cancers in Northwest Lower Michigan, which is pretty pristine, is at a higher rate than it is in Flint or Detroit because of the SO2s coal-fired power plant in the Mercury, that constant rain of where we live here. That's really frightening. And to think about all of our women and our daughters and our granddaughters being exposed to those alarmingly high rates of female cancers. That was one of the primer drivers to try and find the healthiest, strongest, largest, and oldest trees of the native species. The very largest and the very oldest of each species, and work with their genetics. That was the message from the archangels and the angels. It's like Noah's Ark, 2 by 2, save the genetics of the last of the great trees. So
well, let's back up then, because this didn't just come out of thin air for you. You first of all had a near-death experience.
No pun intended, out of thin air. The Mercury's in the SO2.
I know.
Pretty witty.
I know.
No. No, I didn't have a near-death experience. I had a death experience. There's a difference.
Okay, tell us the difference.
I really died. Well, near-death experience is where you go to the edge, but you don't cross over. Or you go to the edge and you leave your body, but you come right back in. A death experience is when you leave your body, go through the tunnel of light, all the way across, and you're aware and you remember who and what it is on the other side. I had total renal failure, which your liver and your kidneys, they no longer work. And you have a few days before your body succumbs to the toxins, the poisons. You blow up like the Goodyear blimp. It's like the worst hangover you ever had times 10. It's really hard. And then you get so much liquid that the pressure around your heart stops beating because there's of the intense pressure. So I wouldn't recommend it, but I'm pretty stubborn. I said, I don't want to go to the hospital or see a doctor. So I went in my bedroom and I had decided to quit drinking alcohol. So I said to my wife, I said, I'm either coming out one of two ways, dead or sober. And either way, it's going to be better for you and the boys. And I said, don't let anybody in here, please. And I took a pint of vodka and 6 beers in there with me. So I said, I'm not going to run from this beast. I am not going to run away. And so I went to bed, and 3 days later, I was pretty near death. And a friend of mine came over, and they took me to the hospital where I did die. But I didn't die. Well, I died. My body died, but I didn't die. But so the doctor there, they wanted to put me on he said it would keep you around 24 hours.
Dialysis?
Yeah. I said, no, I don't need dialysis. He got mad. He goes, you're going to die. We're trying to keep you alive so your family can. I said, I'm not going to die. Just do what you can. And so we got into a chewing match, an argument, and he was really getting hot. And I said, well, hurry up, because and so they did some things to me. I refused to go on dialysis, and I said, now go ask my friend to come back in here. I want to go home. He said, you can't go home. You won't make it home. You're lucky to. Well, anyway, I said, you can't keep me here. So I said, go get Larry. So they went and got Larry. Larry threw me over his shoulder. He goes, you sure you know what you're doing? I said, yes, take me home. And so it was a very few hours after that I went across. That's how that happened. But much to the surprise of some of my family members, that next morning when I sat up in bed and started to talk, my mother was over and they were calling the ambulance because I passed over. But when I came back, it really, really frightened me. So, but I was thirsty. So I said, I'm really thirsty. So they got me some water and I said, and I'm tired too. Then I went back out for a while, but I went across, and one of the first encounters I had is I ran right smack dab into Archangel Michael. That was no accident. And it scared the Jesus out of me, because Michael is very large, very powerful, and not much nonsense. And I've had a colorful past. I'm not afraid of too much. But I knew that when Michael talked, I finally had to listen to somebody, because it wasn't going to go well. So he said, you have to go back. You can't stay. And I said, are you kicking me out of heaven? Am I getting kicked out of heaven too? He goes, no, but you have to go back. You have work to do. And he said, you'll be able. I said, I will do anything you ask of me if I can stay long enough to see our boys who were in middle school graduate from high school. Because if they graduate, I think they'll be young men and I think they're going to be all right. But I'll do anything you ask. So back I went with an angel through the tunnel of light. That's when I came back in and my spirit came into my body and scared some of my family. And it was, I'd lost 100 pounds. I wasn't able to walk. My feet were black. They wanted to cut them off. I said, no, I've grown attached to them, thanks. And about a month after that's when the angel came in at night and asked me to go out in the living room in my leather chair, get a yellow pad, which I did. But it was so bright, I said, I can't see. It's too bright. I had my eyes closed, my hand over my eyes. It was still too bright. Really, you guys, really. And so the lights went down and I went out. It was hard. I got a yellow pad and a pen and I sat down. That's all I remember. And 4 hours later, they woke me up and the boys had to go to school. And my wife came out and said, what are you doing out here? I said, I don't know. And she goes, what are you doing? So she took the pad and she teaches English at a university level. And there was a perfect 7-page outline of this project. Clone the world's largest and oldest trees. And it's all there. I can't write. I'm not really that well educated, or I don't know English that well, but it was perfect. She goes, who wrote this? Did she know I didn't know how to do that? I said, I think I did, but I'm not sure. She goes, yeah, she goes, I'm going to go get the boys. Why don't you go back get to bed? And that's how this project came through. And that's the truth.
So you have this experience, the angel comes in, and you wake up and you've got this pad of paper now with what was like 7 pages of perfectly handwritten outline. And can you share with us what that outline was about?
I don't remember all writing it. It felt like I went to sleep, and when I woke up, it was there. So I don't remember any of the process. But I can only print in capitals. That's just the way I'm wired. So here's a 7-page outline, all in capitals, printed in my handwriting. But it was all laid out perfectly, and I don't know how to lay out, So I started to read it, and it sounded fantastic. It sounded like, holy cow! It's like what we're doing now. We have projects around the world.
Because this is 30 years ago, right? 30 years ago.
Yeah. And I thought it was way on anything that could possibly ever happen, because we live in a village of 160 people in the middle of nowhere in northern Michigan. And so I read it and I just said, well, maybe they're going to maybe this is a book or a story or something, because I said, this could never happen in my life, because I don't have that kind of horsepower. And at that time, we were going through bankruptcy. We didn't even have any money. So in the middle of nowhere, with 2 kids that are 10, 12 years old, I was wondering how I was even going to earn a living, because I was just starting to get my health back. And thank goodness my wife's a school teacher and a professor now. So it was all fantastical. But at night I would get urgings. Somebody would come and say, it's time to start. You need to start. And I know now that was Archangel Michael urging me to just take the first step. And that's where I had to learn how to trust. Where's the money coming from? Where's the help coming from? Where's the science coming from? Where's the travel expenses to go, clone the world's largest and oldest trees? And it's all there. If you trust, if you have faith and trust, when there's no reason why you should, every step of the way, everything that you need will be there. It's just synchronicity upon synchronicity. It's magic and miracles alive and working in your life every day and every night. I know how that must sound, everybody, but just give it a try if you can. And I know it's tough. Learn to trust. Pray to Creator. Ask the Archangels to help you. And your life will shift this very day. if you ask for their help and you give them a permission, because this is a free will planet, remember? That's the way that it was set up. So whoever we invoke our free will with, whether it be politicians or religions or teachers, that's okay. But if you hitch your wagon onto some of the most wonderful, beautiful, loving beings, angels, and especially archangels, oh boy, your life will change so much, so powerfully for the better. You'll start to become empowering yourself. They will help give you the energy to put you on the path that you came here to Earth to follow, your mission. It doesn't matter where you're at or how far off you are. They can help align you and guide you and bring things in. It's miracles and magic and empowerment every day of your life, what I just described. And so to prove me right or to prove me wrong, give it a whirl. And the town that I live in, the village that we live in here, it's called Kopmish, Michigan. And Kopmish is a Native American word for the Chippewas. It means big beech tree. So the big beech tree, the very first European settlers that came here, they would meet with the indigenous people, the Chippewa, under that tree and trade things and be able to establish this northern mission for European settlement. And Kopmish, which is an Ojibwe Chippewa word, it means big beech tree.
David, I have to share a story with you.
Please.
So back in 2007, we bought a cabin in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And so from 2007 on, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours and days in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And I'm a big hiker. And one of the things I do is I hike, and I fell in love with the beech trees up there. And unfortunately, the beech trees have succumbed to the beech bark disease with it's a fungus that gets in there, and then the bugs get in, and then these trees are just enormous. Like when you're picturing these trees, the trunks are so big, but the branches are what would be like a normal sized tree in a neighborhood. I mean, these trees are just massive. And
Yep.
I felt this big affinity towards these trees. And everybody who knows me and who has spent any time with me hiking in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan will hear me talk about these beech trees. And I heard a long time ago that there were some resistant trees. And I felt like when I retire and I have time to volunteer, one of the things that I wanted to do personally was to help propagate these trees back into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that have more resistance. Not that I will get to benefit from them, but it's more about what the future generations of my children and grandchildren will get to benefit, because these trees take so long to grow. So I think it's really cool that you live in a town that has the beach, and it's what really connected me and made me fall in love so much with your story and your mission. And I feel like this is why we have this amazing affinity and connection.
Well, I think there's no accidents. I think that the universe has put all of us that's listening or viewing together today. They have things for us to do. They have gifts to give us, help empower us with things, open our hearts. And we are rebuilding old growth redwood forests, and we are rebuilding old growth giant sequoia forests with trees that are 3,000 years old and older. They said it was impossible to clone those trees. Well, it probably is for most academics or whatever, but when you have archangels on your team, we have rebuilt the world's first old growth redwood forest utilizing 3,000-year-old trees at the Presidio in San Francisco, at Eden Project in England, in New Zealand, and around the world. So even in your lifetime, it's like the redwoods. The redwoods that we clone are 30 foot across the trunk at the base. So they're wider probably by far than the room that you're sitting in.
Oh, for sure. Yes. I mean, everybody right now, look at your room that you're sitting in. And most rooms are probably by like 10 by 12, or if you're in a living room, maybe like 20 by 30. And these trees are bigger than your living room that you're sitting in.
Well, probably as wide as your house, 30 feet wide. But at any rate, if you look up Archangel Ancient Trees, we need your help. We're a nonprofit. But if you'd like to get involved in some work or do some things or use our tree school, wherever you're listening from, we have a tree school for grades 4 through 12, where we teach your children how to do what we do. We give them the tools and they can do it at school. But at any rate, you'll be helping to replant trees that are going to pay it forward for 2,000 to 3,000 years. So every day, they're going to be sequestering CO2. Every day and every night, they're going to be releasing oxygen. And so through your efforts or your donations or whatever it might be, you're going to be paying it forward for the next 2,000 to 3,000 years. That's a pretty good bargain.
Sure
And you're
is.
going to be planting the largest, oldest, toughest genetics of the oldest tree on the planet.
Wow.
So this is it. And by the way, if you live in California, Oregon, or Washington State, we've planted about 6 cities with our trees so far. In 20 years, one of Archangel's 18-inch tall trees, in 20 years will be over 100 feet tall, and a man standing up will not be able to touch his hands around the trunk in 20 years.
Wow.
So in 20 years, you'll be able to walk through a forest of giants.
That's incredible.
100 feet tall. If you choose to join the project and reinforce an area that needs it. So that's pretty good results, in just 20 years.
It sure is.
And for as long as when Jesus Christ was here on earth till now, from now, that in the future, what you're doing will be paying dividends for the planet.
I love that. You know what's funny to me? I realize that you're working with archangels and you actually have ARCH in your last name.
Yes. Isn't that hilarious?
Can we go back to your NDE for a minute?
Sure.
Can you describe what Archangel Michael looked like?
Yes. A hologram of blue light. He seemed to be about 20 feet tall. A hologram of like a human form. A very powerful, very large male entity. But I have known, I've come to learn with working with Michael every day and every night for 30 years that angels can take on any form that is acceptable to each of you that are listening. They don't want to scare you. So they can come in the form of a bird or a kitty or a baby or whatever it is in your belief system.
I've never heard anybody say that before. That's fascinating to me.
So what I saw was something that would work on me. Now remember, I had a very colorful, if you read the book, The Man Who Planted Trees by Jim Robbins.
Yes.
I was born and raised in Detroit, and I rode with my first real motorcycle gang at 17 years old. I wouldn't recommend it. It's a pretty rough start. And I used to fight for money illegally in warehouses and all training for now. But, it would take something like that to make me afraid or get my attention. Well, it did. But I would not look for that from Archangel Michael for any of you that are listening, or Lori, for you, because Michael will come to you as a color blue. Michael's color is deep, clear blue. That's the ray that Michael has. Okay, so anything of blue, if you like to wear blue, if you like blue paint on your car or your, it could be powder blue. It could be whatever form that won't scare you and won't offend you. It could be like a blue angel, like whatever your church or your religion that you know as a child. So Michael's in charge of all the archangels. And Michael's charge is directly from God, Creator. Michael is the strongest form of protection on planet Earth, bar none. Michael is in charge with many, 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 many legions of guardian angels and warrior angels to protect Earth and all of our kingdoms by direct command of God. Okay. It's Michael. If you're listening, you probably already know Michael, or you've experienced Michael. Or if you're new to it, Michael's probably trying to get your attention, saying, I'm here to help you. I'm here to protect you and guide you. And all you have to do is ask. So it's a simple thing. You don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to pray. And by the way, you talk to archangels. You don't pray to archangels. You only pray to Creator or God. Talk to them like your friends. And if you say, Archangel Michael, I need your help. That's all you have to do. You don't even have to do it out loud. Mentally say, Archangel Michael, I need your help. And immediately there's a line of light from Archangel Michael. Connects immediately. And then things really take on dynamics and move when you say, and I give you my permission to work with me, protect me. Okay. I would not recommend that you give your permission or your free will to anything that you don't know or trust. Because there's lots of things out there that would like you to connect with them that aren't for your highest good. But Archangel Michael is the protector of all kingdoms. And if you say, I need your help, and I give you my permission, your life will change from this moment on. Because that allows Archangel energy to help protect you, guide you, open doors for you, love you, connect you with others. And it doesn't take 2 or 3 days to kick in. It'll start at the end of this broadcast or sooner. And so I've been an advocate to anybody and everybody that give it a try. There's help already here. And we look at the political situations that we're in. We look at the wars that are ongoing. You know what? We can change that by asking for intervention from the higher powers, the more loving, the more powerful higher powers that are waiting to say, we choose the path of light. We choose the path of love. We don't choose the path of war. We don't choose the path of killing. And if collectively in collective consciousness, all of us that are listening, all of us on earth would say, we choose that path, we can end this thing rather quickly with their help. So it's not a time to be that afraid. I say the world to me appears it's in a crouch. And when you're crouching down, that's not a powerful position. And it's people like you, Lori, and your shows and your books that help people lift people up to get them out of the crouch into the mindset of hope. And so I hope the people that are listening understand I wouldn't be here without you. I just have a message and a tree message. It's people like you, Lori, with these shows and with your books and your tireless efforts to make things more loving and better. That's who we need to tip our hats with. You, my friend, a powerful light worker. And I appreciate you and I'm grateful.
I appreciate you and I'm grateful too. Thank you very much for saying that. So you go through the tunnel, you see Archangel Michael. What did it feel like when you were out of your body and on the other side?
Well, at first, it's pretty scary because you lift up out of your body. It's you have the same consciousness, the same awareness, but your body's back there and you're here. But you know that it's you and you still have an energy body. But we don't remember that from other times that we've been here. So it's pretty scary. So they send an angel or two to be with you, to hold you, say, no, you're afraid. It's okay. You're going to be all right. Just try and calm down. They really, there's divisions of angels that do just that comfort and console and strengthen people as they lift up out of their body, transition. And you're really glad they're there. And then the tunnel is like the helix of DNA, how it has some pink lines on the wall that go one way and the light goes the other way. Look just like a big tunnel with those lines of light in it. And it's not up and down, it's horizontal. So you get in the tunnel of light and they're hanging on to you, talking you down, say, it'll be all right, you know, all this and all that, and you're gone. And it feels like you're going a million miles an hour. Then you get really afraid, they're talking to you, and then bang, you arrive. And you're in the next dimension. The problem with that is once you go to that dimension, it is so beautiful. It is so, there's just There's radiations of love that go through your whole being. Love like you've never experienced here on earth, that just radiates through your being. And the colors are beautiful. Not the colors we have here on earth. They're even more intense and beautiful there. And hang on to your hats. There are cities there. There's people there. There's your relatives and friends there. They're not in body, but they're there. And they're not sick. They're not ancient and old. They're not decrepit. And it's just really, really, really wonderful. And what you know, I didn't get to say it out of back. So, just my luck. I'm being facetious, but it's the opposite of something to be afraid of. Once you get there, you won't be in a big hurry to get back. And by the way, once we're on the next dimension or the other side, you can come back anytime you want to see your mom, your husband, your wife, your kids, or anytime you just have to think about them, and bang, you're back and connected. The hard part is you're talking to them and a lot of people can't hear you. So you have to be patient, but you can come in and check in anytime that you want from that dimension. It's not like you're long gone, I'll never hear or see from you again. Everybody, when I walk around, I have some vision or sight that is a gift. I can see I can see their relatives there, their moms or their dads or their whatever it is, following them around. And you can even see people's children waiting to be born. A lot of women will have a little girl or a little boy or whatever. It seems to be like 3 years old. And they're the ones that are coming when the women decide to have children. So it's a beautiful thing, you guys. It's nothing to be afraid of. I know that's easy to say, but it seems Earth seems really heavy, really negative, full of if it isn't one thing, it's two things. And when things are just going good, somebody gets sick or it's not that way the next dimension. But I would imagine there's lots of other places, but that was the place that I went.
How were you different when you came back?
Well, when I came back, my awareness had changed. I was aware of lots of things I wasn't aware of before. My ability to give love and receive love, instead of being a tough old male, you wouldn't have. Do any of you women out there know what the male ego is all about? I would think so. But I would feel things, loving things, like when I would see a baby, I would start to cry. Or when I'd see things that were beautiful, I would start to choke up. It was like, oh no, I've lost my masculinity. I'm so sensitive. And then when I finally learned how to walk, I could walk outside. I sat out there with my dog, and he'd been with me, all along through this process. We were sitting on a bench on our porch, and we live out in the country. And the birds, it was that time of the year, it was like June. The birds were singing, and I thought I could understand what they were saying to each other. So I'm sitting there going, my dog's name was Buddy. I said, oh no, Buddy, I've lost my mind. The birds are talking, I can understand it. And I looked at my dog, and he was talking to me, and I said, and I could hear what he was saying telepathically. So I started to cry. I said, oh no, I made it through all that, and I've lost my mind. Seriously. So that's when I learned that if they could just turn it down a little bit more, let me be more third dimensional, in body, human, you know what I mean? With all that really helped, but everything changed. I no longer wanted to go deer hunting. I no longer wanted to fight with anybody about anything. I had this compulsion or this burning inside of me. How can I help the earth? I need to help the earth every way that I can. It was like, I remember when I read, carry some toothpicks. And if you see a rainfall, throw a toothpick in there so he can land in there, or a butterfly and get a drink of water. So I'd say, boy, that's not very masculine, but I carried some toothpicks. But I knew that the rest of my days on this planet, and that was 30 years ago, I would use every ounce of my being to help this earth and her kingdoms and try and help eliminate the suffering. So
beautiful.
24/7, that's what I've been doing. It's a legacy.
I have your book here. So this is a book that was written called The Man Who Planted Trees, A Story of Lost Groves, The Science of Trees, and a Plan to Save the Planet by Jim Robbins. And he featured you in this book. I read this and I wanted to read something to the audience because I thought that this, I love trees. I've always loved trees. I've had an affinity towards them. I know that they're important, but I didn't realize until I was reading this book all of the things that the trees do. So I just want to read this paragraph. It says, trees feed oxygen and minerals into the ocean, create rain, render mercury nitrites and other toxic wastes in the soil harmless. They gather and neutralize sulfur dioxide, ozone, carbon dioxide, and other harmful air pollutants in their tissue. They create homes and building materials. They offer shade. They provide medicine and produce a wide variety of nuts and fruits. They sustain all manner of wildlife, birds, and insects with an array of food and shelter. They are the planet's heat shield, slowing the evaporation of water and cooling the earth. They generate vast clouds of chemicals that are vital to myriad aspects of the Earth's ecosystem and likely vital to our health and well being. They are natural reservoirs. As much as 100 gallons of water can be stored in the crown of a large tree, and the water they release is part of a largely unrecognized water cycle. So, in addition to what the trees do, I've heard you talk about trees as antennas. So, will you explain what that means and how these different trees are antennas that help our planet?
Yes. For 30 years, I've been wandering around the United States, the United States and Europe. And I make it a point to wherever we go to look for the giants, the largest and oldest living beings, that I make it a point to talk to the indigenous people that have been there for thousands of years and to learn from their wisdom. So for 30 years, that's been part of my quest. And I've learned out in the Pacific Northwest and out in California that the grandmother and grandfather trees, these ancient beings, are where some of the tribes believe that their spirit leaves when they leave their body. They reside in these grandmother and grandfather trees. That's where they reside. And so as we cut them all down, we've eliminated that place where their souls go to be, their spirits, and live on. So we've desecrated their cemeteries, their living cemeteries all over the world. And 30 years ago, they said, well, why don't you just talk to the trees and ask them for their wisdom? Why don't you talk to the trees and ask them for what diseases they'd be willing to help you with? And I said, well, I don't know how to talk to trees. And they said, well, we've been talking to trees for tens of thousands of years. Would you like to learn? I said, do you think I can? They said, everybody can. Let me repeat it. Everybody can. Not just talk to the trees, but listen to what the trees are saying back, because they are a living, breathing, sentient beings that have been on this planet for 300 million years longer than humans. They're more advanced in a lot of ways than we are as human beings. They can understand our language. They can speak numbers of languages in return so that you can understand their wisdom. They feel pain. When you cut one down, it screams in pain. We can measure that with science and alerts all the trees in the area. So all the logging that we've done and we are doing, those trees scream out in pain and death to all the trees, warning the trees around them. We can measure that.
That actually makes me want to cry.
I think that's a natural, normal reaction to that. They're more than boards of paper. They're living beings, and they're here to help us. They put out aerosol that's critical to stop the pandemics.
Wow.
We've cut down our natural pandemic protection veil on the West Coast when we removed the redwoods and the sequoias. Now they're free to come into this country and harm every living thing. There are first protection against the SO2s and mercuries from the power plants from China. We've taken them down. Now our children and our children's children are going to suffer from cancers and things because in our greed and our ignorance, we did not listen to the indigenous people. We did not ask the trees. Now we're reaping that wind. But as long as God gives me breath and I have the ability to speak, I'm going to ask you to loan me your children in their schools so we can teach them. How to do it is what we do and why we do it. Give them the tools and the materials to replant those great forests, wherever they may be. That's called Archangels Tree School. We're not just planting trees. We're teaching the little lights the truth. We're teaching them how to talk to the trees. We have special people that work with us. And if you go online and look at our videos, you'll see us teaching third graders and fourth graders how to speak to 2,000-year-old sequoias. And that's who we are.
Can you explain how we can all communicate with the trees? What do you do? What's the process?
Simple. You walk out and say, I'm here to talk to you, and I know you can hear me, and I want to hear you. So what do I need to do? So what you have to do is turn around and back into the tree. So you go in butt first, and you go up to a tree, put your butt and your back and the back of your head against the tree trunk.
Okay.
Then you drop your hands to your side, and at your side, you put the palms of your hands on that trunk of the tree. So your butt, your back,
like
and your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, straight
Okay.
down.
Yeah.
And you stand there. And you say, I would like to be able to understand what you're trying to tell me. Then the hard part comes, you have to be quiet. You have to pay attention. And you have to focus. And it might take 2 or 3 minutes, and then you're going to start to say, I'm hearing something. Are you trying to tell me? So the dialogue will start after you calm down. Because that tree is going to take your frenetic monkey brain energy out of your body as a gift, put it into the ground and render it harmless, drop some of the veils of our electronic equipment, our phones and our computers. They have our electrical systems all screwed up. They'll start straightening that out so you even stand a chance to hear them speak with you. And if you practice that, I don't care where you're listening from, go to your favorite tree and give that a whirl 2 or 3 times. And I've had major television news broadcast people. I've had presidents of some of the largest corporations in this country. I've had atheists. I've had hard-boiled PhDs from lots of universities that scoffed. I said, okay, all right, just give it a whirl. And I have on film some of them coming away from the trees. What looked like they just won the lottery and saw a ghost. Oh my God, I heard the tree talking. I can't believe it. So it works, everybody. It works.
So can you share some of the messages that you have received from communicating with trees?
That would be several books.
I bet it would. I bet it would.
All right. Here's something that if you go visit the sequoias or the redwoods, or you go visit the sugar maples, or you visit the pine trees, the ability to communicate with their pine tree anywhere on this planet, or any other redwood here on this planet, and they do. So most people don't understand that it was only, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, we realized that whales off the east coast of the United States are communicating with whales all the way off the coast of Europe, all the way across to Greenland. They can communicate the entire Atlantic Ocean, communicating with like whales. There's hard science to prove it. So do trees. That's some new hard science that you can prove from New Zealand or Australia, is where it's been tested to the forests here on the West Coast. And yes, indeed, they keep in communication with each other no matter where you are, where you plant them, or whatever. So that's new news. There are some people in Canada that are very open spiritually Diana Beresford Kroger being one of them. She's Canadian. She's genius. She's also a scientist. There's new science. If you read in Jim's book or Diana's books, that breast cancer is a terrible thing. It's just an awful thing that women have to perhaps endure or not, or ovarian cancer or cervical cancer. Well, guess what? In black walnut trees, the ones that have black walnuts, the native black walnut trees, in their leaves, there's compounds in those leaves. If young girls would take a leaf and rub it on their wrist, their body will pick up those chemicals and those combinations of things that show great promise of making them not totally, but significantly more resistant to women's cancers just by taking a leaf from a black walnut tree and rubbing it on their skin. Also, those trees aerosol out of their leaves, aerosols. If we would get busy and plant black walnut trees in all of our grade schools, so all of our little girls coming in and out of school, going outside and playing recess, we're breathing in those aerosols for the black walnuts. I think it could really make a serious dent in the scourge later on in life of having their breasts removed or their ovarian cancer. So we're learning new cures. We're learning powerful things of how trees help humans and can help humans. And I could go on, but I urge you to read the book, The Man Who Planted Trees by Jim Robbins.
Yeah.
Or get Diana Beresford Kroger, Kroeger. She's Canadian. Some of the things that her science has discovered about some of the ancient trees. And I'd say that's the best that I can answer that in this short amount of time.
So I think I read in that book that there were a number of, I mean, it was like a double-digit number of diseases that didn't exist 30 years ago, that they believe that the histamines that these trees were releasing were protecting humans from. But because we've changed our system by cutting so many of them down, we're no longer being naturally protected by the earth, by the trees, because of what we've destroyed, unknowingly destroyed.
And that book was written by Jim Robbins, who's a New York Times Science Times reporter. That's a pretty small group of science reporters. And his book is all footnoted. Another great tree of promise. We do thousands and thousands, and we teach school children all over this country, are black willows. The native black willow tree, and its range is from the Rocky Mountains all the way east to the Atlantic, from the Canadian border all the way down to Central Florida. And black willows, there's a whole chapter in the book on black willows of how, if we were to replant those, we cut them all down for better views of the lakes and the rivers, but we teach children how to make those cuttings, thousands of them, and they have the ability to pull the mercury and the dioxins out of water along our streams, rivers, and wherever we choose to plant them.
So they're a natural filtration.
Yes, they are. And their pollen is some of the earliest pollen in the spring. The same chemicals that do that for the fish in the waters, the bees and all pollinators go to those trees, take the pollen back to their, like where the brood for the bees, or also the brood for the fishes. And it's like mother's milk, the natural immunity for a healthier, stronger life for the bees, the butterflies, the fish are within those compounds. So when we put those back, we have a bee decline that's very serious in this country and around the world. We have fish decline, and I think in large part, if we were, all of us and your children were to plant black willows along our rivers and creeks and lakes and our watersheds, start getting the toxins neutralized and putting back into that system the pollens with these miracle chemicals. And there's a chapter in Jim's book about that. It's footnoted for the hard science. So there's things you can do no matter where you're listening right now. Right here, right now, we will empower you, help you start to get started to make where you live healthier, a better place for your children and your grandchildren to come. It's just small steps. If we all do a few small steps starting today, we can take by a large part the threat of climate change and reverse it. It is reversible.
So let's talk about climate change for a minute. So our planet has a history of climate change. Goes through ice ages, it goes through different things. What I read in Jim's book, this book was written in 2012, so it's 11 years old now. And in 2012, he said that the warmest recorded year on the planet was in 2010. So I was curious, and before this interview, I did a little bit of research and I put some information into ChatGPT, and I asked what was the warmest year on the planet as of 2023. And I was surprised that my answer was 2020. And then I asked, what were the last 3 warmest years? And they were 2020, 2019, and 2018. And then I asked what were in the last 20 years, what were the warmest years? And every single one of those years was after 1997. So that means I think that there's a lot of evidence that the earth is warming, and the trees used to have a natural protection. They would naturally migrate, but now we have all of these urban areas and the trees cannot naturally migrate anymore. So will you explain to us what you're doing with the Angel Archive trees and how you are trying to protect the trees from the climate change that is being imposed on the planet right now?
I'd be glad to do that. That's a great question. It's called assisted migration. And about 30 years ago, the angels and the archangels specifically said, David, you have to help the trees move north where it's cooler and more moist. I said, all right, which trees where? They said, all trees in the northern hemisphere. I said, all trees? I said, yes. It's going to be too hot and too dry, and they will succumb to the heat and the drought. So I didn't know anything about assisted migration, but I sure as heck do now. We just had a nice story 3 weeks ago in the New York Times Magazine that went out around the world, and that was specifically on assisted migration. So I guess we were pioneers of that. In essence, here's the short story. Most trees can only move 1 foot a year. So if you have a stand of tree or a grove of trees or a forest, through natural movement, it's only 1 foot a year. Things are getting so much hotter, so much drier, so quickly. It's like all the sequoias in California are doomed. All the redwoods.
Say that again. Hold on. All the sequoias. I mean, people know General Sherman. They've been to the Sequoia National Park. These are among the largest, tallest trees on the planet. And you're saying that they are all doomed?
I would say 90% of them will be gone within 15 years.
Did you say 15, 1-5 or 50?
Yes. 15.
Wow.
We've already lost 20% of the old growth, 2 to 3,000 year old giant sequoias in all of California. In 2 years, we lost 20%. The other forests that we've been in are so damn hot and dry. Assisted migration, yes. Assisted migration is the only hope for most of the 68,000 different species of trees that we have here on Earth, because it's getting alarmingly hot and dry rapidly. We don't have 10 years, 30 years to move the trees. To save the genetics in those forests, we need to move them now. And so if we move, let's just say, the giant sequoias about 1,500 miles north to Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, it's still cool there. It still rains there. There's still fog there. And so tree species by tree species, you take a look at its native range. Where has it been for the last 10,000, 30,000 years? And you look generally north in the northern hemisphere, where the future climate and the future rainfall and thing mimics what they've been used to be grown in for the last 30,000 years. So for like with coast redwoods and giant sequoias, which are definitely on their way out in the state of California, we've moved tens of thousands up into Eugene, Portland, Oregon. We planted 40 different cities in the Puget Sound area. We're moving on up to Vancouver, British Columbia. And the same with the sugar maples. The sugar maples are leaving in the Midwest, in the East Coast. Those have to be moved north up into Canada. And starting in January, we're going down to Florida. Most people don't know that in Florida, there are 3,000-year-old trees that are as big as the redwoods on the West Coast, and they're called cypress.
Oh,
So we're talking trees that are 20 to 25 foot in diameter strong. 3,000 years old that are growing in Florida, hardly anybody knows about. Well, they've been logging those off, and people have been stealing them, and they're going to blink off the face of the earth. So this January, I would invite you down to accompany us to where these great grand trees grow and be a part of the climbing team and document saving the 3,000-year-old redwoods of Florida called the cypress. They're
wow.
amazingly huge, giant trees. So that's one of our projects this winter. I would also invite you to go along out on Long Island and the east coast of the United States from Maine all the way down to Florida. We're going to find the 12 largest and oldest trees of species like oaks, maples, beeches is on our list.
Yes.
Find the ancient giants, climb them and clone them, and begin the genetic archiving of the great trees of the East Coast. I'm inviting you.
I would love
That's
that and
what I
be
thought about.
honored. Yes, absolutely. Yes. David, how many trees do you think you've planted in your lifetime? Do you have any idea?
Oh, not that many, 500,000 maybe.
500,000. That's incredible. Do you have a favorite tree?
I like giant sequoias and I like sugar maples. I like banyan trees. I like the baobabs over in Africa. We're going over there and do those.
Right,
So
because
it's just to be
we've got to
around.
take some of these warmer trees and bring them, right? These warmer climate trees.
Exactly right. Archangel hears from 160 countries a year saying, please come and do our trees. 160. Wow. And right now, CNN tells us that we're reaching about 2.5 billion readers and viewers a year. And I would invite you, and I would invite all of your listeners to join us. It doesn't cost any money. It just takes the intention of leaving the world a better place. If you go online to Archangel Ancient Trees website, there's a number of ways that you can help. There's a number of ways that we can come and help your children. And why don't we do it this way? Why don't we all do it together and make a real difference? And we can look at each other and everybody else will be everybody else's hero. We'll all be the hero. How does that sound?
I think that sounds amazing. So everybody who's watching, if you please share this video with as many people that you know that also care about trees and ask them to do the same. I really think that this video has a chance to enlighten everybody and help this really beautiful and worthwhile cause, which is to save our planet. That's incredible. And this is a family affair for you. Your grandsons and your sons are helping you.
We're actually doing most of the work. I just sit around and tell stories.
I love it. Well, didn't one of your grandsons perfect the ability to take these cellular parts of the trees and use those to help clone?
That was my son, Jake. There's a video on, there's lots of videos, but one of them, it's called Moving the Giants. Okay. So if you go on YouTube or wherever where they're all stored.
I'll link it up above here.
Yeah, Moving the Giants. I filmed that with, I think it was either Geographic or some other, it's about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, up in Jed Smith, the redwoods up there. And I want you to see it.
So David, I cannot even thank you enough for what you're doing in the world. I can't thank you enough for what you're doing for the trees, what you're doing for my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. It has been the greatest honor and pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom about the trees. Thank you for caring so much. And thank you for coming on to talk to my audience about the beautiful trees and about your mission.
Well, thank you very much. I'm just doing the best that I know how. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.